It happens in a flash, and we are masters at pretending it didn't. It's that surge of genuine, satisfying pleasure you feel when you hear about a rival's misfortune. It's the cold, cutting remark that escapes your lips in an argument with a loved one, a remark whose precision and cruelty surprises even you. It's the flash of intense, burning envy that seizes your heart when a friend announces a great success. Or perhaps it's a dark, selfish fantasy of power or revenge that flickers through your mind, a thought so ugly that you would never admit it to another living soul. In these moments, we catch a glimpse of a stranger who lives within us, a monster in the mirror, and our reaction is always the same. A wave of immediate shame, followed by a swift and brutal act of self-censorship. "That's not me," we tell ourselves forcefully. "I don't know where that came from." We push the thought down. We lock it away in the dark. We disown it. We treat these parts of ourselves like a deep family secret, a source of shame that must be hidden from the world, and most importantly, from ourselves. Our entire lives become a project of curation. We build a clean, well-lit, respectable identity. We are kind, we are rational, we are generous. We are the polished resume, the smiling social media profile, the carefully constructed persona that we present to our friends, our family, and our colleagues. This good self is the person we believe we are, and we spend almost all of our energy maintaining its facade. The monster, meanwhile, is everything that threatens this project. It is our rage, our greed, our pettiness, our vulnerability, our secret joys, our unacceptable desires. It is the creature we have chained in the basement of our psyche, and our greatest fear, the one that drives our relentless performance of goodness, is that the chain might break. We fear that the mask will slip, and that someone, for a fleeting moment, will see the monster that lurks beneath. And so we starve it, we ignore it, and we convince ourselves, day after day, that we are only the light. We are only the good parts of our own story. But what if this lifelong project is a profound, tragic mistake? What if, in running from this monster, we are also running from the source of our greatest strength? This is where we must turn to the great explorer of the soul, Carl Jung. He was not just a psychologist, he was a cartographer of the inner world, a man who dared to map the vast and dangerous territories of the human psyche. And he gave this monster a name. He called it the shadow. The abyss is the uncharted darkness of our own unconscious mind, and the shadow is the feared and powerful creature that resides there. For our entire lives, we are taught to fear this abyss. But the great, dangerous, and liberating secret of Jung's work is this: the path to becoming a whole, powerful, and authentic individual does not lie in strengthening the walls of the basement. It lies in finding the courage to walk down the stairs, to turn on the light, and to face the monster directly. What if the same place where we have locked away our greatest shame also contains our most valuable treasure? This video is a map. It is a guide to that descent. It is a journey into the abyss to uncover the one, life-changing truth your shadow has been hiding from you. To begin our descent into the abyss, we need a map, and the most detailed map of the human psyche was drawn by Carl Jung. He saw our inner world not as a single unified entity, but as a complex architecture with many rooms, floors, and a deep, dark basement. To understand the shadow, we must first understand the building in which it lives. On the sunlit top floor, we have what Jung called the persona. The word comes from the Latin for the masks worn by actors in ancient Greek theater. Your persona is exactly that, a mask. It is the carefully crafted, socially acceptable version of you that you present to the world. It is the good employee, the caring friend, the responsible parent, the witty intellectual. It is your public relations officer, designed to make you fit in and be liked. The persona is not necessarily a lie. It is a necessary tool for navigating a complex social world. The danger, however, is when we forget we are wearing a mask. When we mistake this curated partial self for our total identity. Just below the persona is the command center of our conscious world, the ego. The ego is the I that you think you are. It is the CEO of your conscious mind, the narrator of your life story. Its job is to make decisions, to manage your daily affairs, and most importantly, to act as the gatekeeper of your identity. The ego is constantly deciding what is me and what is not me. It works tirelessly to maintain the integrity of your persona, to ensure that your actions and expressed feelings align with the mask you have chosen to wear. Any thought, feeling, or impulse that threatens this carefully constructed identity is deemed unacceptable by the ego. And what happens to these unacceptable parts of ourselves? They are not destroyed. They are simply disowned. The ego, in its role as gatekeeper, takes these unwanted thoughts and feelings and throws them down a chute into the dark, forgotten basement of the psyche. This basement is what Jung called the shadow. It is the metaphorical sack we all carry on our backs, filled with every aspect of ourselves that we have refused to acknowledge. It contains the parts we are most ashamed of: our greed, our rage, our pettiness, our envy, our vulnerabilities, our perverse desires. These are the things that, if exposed, would shatter the pristine image of our persona. But here we come to the crucial point, the beginning of the great secret. The shadow does not only contain our negative traits. We also repress parts of ourselves that are powerful and full of life, simply because they did not fit into the narrow box of our conscious identity. If you were raised in a family that valued quiet agreeableness, your assertiveness, your ambition, and your capacity for righteous anger may have been exiled to the shadow. If you were taught to be practical and serious, your wild creativity, your playful spirit, and your sense of wonder may have been deemed childish and locked away in the dark. The shadow, therefore, is not evil. It is simply the home of everything that is unlived within you. And this reveals the one, life-altering truth that the shadow is hiding. We spend our lives fearing the basement, believing it contains only a monster. But the great truth is that the shadow contains not just our inner monster, but our inner gold. The same primal energy that fuels our destructive rage is the energy that fuels our passion and our drive to protect what we love. The same part of us that holds our deepest insecurities also holds our greatest potential for resilience. Your vitality, your power, your authenticity, your connection to the raw, untamed forces of life, all of it is mixed in with the mud you have hidden in the dark. To become a whole and complete person, what Jung called the process of individuation, is not to live a cleaner, more perfect life in the sunlit rooms of the ego. It is to find the courage to take a lantern, walk down the stairs, and begin the sacred work of mining for gold in the darkness of your own abyss. To speak of a dark basement and hidden gold is one thing. To make the journey yourself is another entirely. My own descent into the abyss was not a conscious choice, but a reluctant pilgrimage, forced upon me by the slow, crushing weight of an inauthentic life. For most of my life, the mask I wore, my persona, was that of the good kid. I was agreeable, I was accommodating, I was a peacekeeper. My primary goal was to be perceived as selfless, to be the person who never caused trouble, who always put the needs of others before their own. And because this was my conscious identity, my ego made a very clear ruling. Selfishness was the ultimate sin. Any thought, feeling, or desire that could be labeled as selfish was immediately and violently repressed. It was the monster I was most afraid of, and I threw it into the darkest corner of my psychic basement. But this repression came at a staggering cost. By disowning any form of self-interest, I had also disowned my own boundaries. By rejecting ambition as a form of selfishness, I had rejected my own creative fire. My life became a series of accommodations. I pursued a safe career path to meet the expectations of my family. I stayed in relationships long after they had become emotionally draining, because ending them would have been selfish. I said yes to every request, every demand on my time and energy, because the thought of saying no filled me with an unbearable guilt. On the outside, my persona was a success. I was seen as reliable, generous, and kind. On the inside, I felt like a ghost. A quiet, simmering resentment became the background music of my life. My own needs, my own desires, my own dreams went unheard and unmet. I was living a life that belonged to everyone but me. The encounter with my shadow was not a single, dramatic event. It was a slow, painful breakdown. It came in the form of a burnout so profound that I could barely function. It came in the wreckage of a relationship that had collapsed under the weight of my inability to set a single, healthy boundary. The well-lit rooms of my conscious life had become a prison, and the foundation was cracking. I had no choice but to finally look at what I had hidden in the basement. The process was agonizing. The first glimpses of my own repressed selfishness were horrifying. I saw a part of me that was resentful, angry, and desperately needy. A part of me that didn't want to help, that didn't want to be agreeable. A part that simply wanted to scream, "What about me?" My ego fought back with its usual weapons, shame and guilt. "You are a bad, selfish person," it whispered. But as I continued to look, with a kind of fearful curiosity, the image of the monster began to change. I realized that this rejected, selfish part of me was not a monster at all. It was more like a neglected, starving child, the guardian of my own life force. And as I looked closer, I began to see the glint of something else in the darkness, mixed in with all the mud and the anger. It was gold. The repressed selfishness, I realized, was the raw, unrefined ore of my own sovereignty. Within it was the ability to say no, which is the foundation of all true integrity. Within it was my personal ambition, the energy I needed to pursue a life of authentic purpose. Within it was the capacity for self-care, the simple and radical act of treating my own needs as valid. I had thrown the monster in the basement, but I had accidentally thrown the treasure in with it. The great confession of my own shadow work is this: the thing I was most ashamed of, the selfishness I spent my entire life running from, was the very key to my own liberation. It was the source of my boundaries, my voice, and my strength. To recognize the existence of the shadow and the treasure it holds is to stand at the entrance of a dark and forbidding cave. The journey inward, the descent into the underworld of the psyche, is not a casual undertaking. It is a path that requires courage, honesty, and a profound respect for the powerful forces that reside within us. It must be said that if you are dealing with deep and significant trauma, this journey is best undertaken with the guidance of a trained professional. But for those who are ready to begin the introspective work of self-discovery, Jung's map offers us several paths, not to conquer the shadow, but to begin a dialogue with it. The first path is to become a shadow detective, and your primary clue is the phenomenon of projection. The shadow, by its very nature, is unconscious, making it almost impossible to see directly. We are masters at hiding our own darkness from ourselves. But the shadow has a clever way of making itself known. We constantly see it in other people. The traits in others that provoke the strongest emotional reaction in you, the most intense irritation, the most self-righteous judgment, even the most obsessive admiration, are often signposts pointing directly to the disowned parts of yourself. Here's the practice. Think of a person who triggers a powerful and irrational response in you. Now identify the specific quality that provokes this reaction. Is it their arrogance, their laziness, their emotional vulnerability, their need for attention? Once you have named the quality, you must perform a difficult and courageous act of introspection. Ask yourself with radical honesty, where in my own life does this same quality exist, perhaps in a different form? Where have I been arrogant? In what ways have I been lazy? When have I secretly craved attention? This practice of reclaiming the projection is the first step to turning on the lights in the basement. The people who irritate us the most are often our most unwilling and valuable teachers. The second path is to practice compassionate, detached observation of your inner world. Once you begin to identify the contents of your shadow, you will start to notice them appearing as thoughts and feelings in your daily life. Your old habit is to judge these thoughts, to feel shame, and to immediately repress them again. The new practice is to meet them with the calm curiosity of a naturalist observing a rare and wild creature. When a surge of envy, a flash of rage, or a selfish impulse arises, you do not act on it, but you also do not crush it. You simply acknowledge its presence. You say to yourself internally, there is envy. Interesting. You treat these dark thoughts not as invading enemies, but as frightened messengers from a forgotten part of your soul. And you ask them questions. What does this envy want for me? What is the unmet need that it is trying to express? Perhaps the envy is a distorted message from your own stifled ambition. Perhaps the rage is a desperate signal from a part of you whose boundaries have been violated for too long. This practice transforms the relationship you have with yourself. You are no longer a frightened victim of your own dark thoughts. You are a wise and compassionate listener, learning the lost language of your own soul. The final path is to give the shadow a safe and creative voice. The tremendous psychic energy that is locked away in the shadow needs to go somewhere. If it remains repressed, it will either fester and become toxic, poisoning us from within, or it will burst out in uncontrolled and destructive ways in our lives. The safest and most powerful way to engage with this energy is through creative integration. This can take many forms. You can start a journal and have a written dialogue with your shadow. Ask it questions. What do you want? What do you fear? What have you been trying to tell me? And then write its answers, uncensored. You can also turn to art. Draw or paint your inner monster. What does your repressed anger look like? What is the shape of your hidden weakness? This is not about glorifying the darkness. It is about giving it a contained and conscious space to exist. By giving the shadow a voice, you reduce its power to control you unconsciously. You bring the monster out of the basement, not to let it run wild in the streets, but to invite it into the living room, where you can finally have a conversation. We began this journey with a fleeting, shameful glimpse of the monster in the mirror. Our lifelong instinct, reinforced by every aspect of our culture, has been to look away, to disown that dark reflection, and to retreat into the well-lit safety of our curated persona. The entire purpose of our descent into the abyss has been to gather the courage to do the opposite, to hold that gaze, to look at the monster, not with fear or hatred, but with a steady, compassionate curiosity, and to finally ask it its name. The great and final truth that the shadow hides from us is this: the goal of a meaningful life is not to be a good person, but to be a whole person. And wholeness is, by definition, the integration of light and dark. The monster in the mirror is not your enemy. It is the exiled and wounded part of your own totality. We have been taught to believe that our strengths and our weaknesses are separate things, but they are inextricably linked. The gold is inseparable from the mud. Your capacity for deep connection is tied to your hidden vulnerability. Your ability to set powerful boundaries is tied to your repressed anger. Your resilience is forged in the fires of your acknowledged weakness. To deny the monster is to deny the treasure it guards. This is the process Jung called individuation. It is the journey of becoming an undivided individual, of reclaiming the lost and disowned parts of yourself to become a complete human being. It is a sacred and challenging task. To be whole is, in a sense, to become holy. It is to stop fighting a civil war within your own soul and to finally sign a treaty of peace. You do not have to let the monster drive the car, but you must let it have a seat, a voice, and a place in your own inner council. The journey into the abyss of the self is the most challenging and rewarding adventure a human being can undertake. If you are ready to continue this exploration into the depths of the psyche, I invite you to subscribe to the channel for more. And now, I invite you to be brave in the comments. Tell us, what is one trait you've been taught to see as negative that you now suspect might hold a hidden golden strength? Your courage in sharing your shadow might just give someone else the courage to face their own.